Okay, so if we look at Perek Chav Hey, this coming week's parasha is told us Perek Chav Hey, pasuk. We could start around let's call it Chav Tes, and the psukim just told us about the upbringing of Yaakov and Esav, and in pasuk Chav Tes it tells us that Yaakov prepared Vayozid Yaakov Nazid, Vayavo Esav and Asad his wife, and he was very tired. Vayomer Esav el Yaakov, he said to him, Haliteni na min adom hadom hazeh, ki ayef anochi al kain kar shmo adom. So he said, give me from this red lentil soup that you have. I'm very, very exhausted from my hunting. And Yaakov said to him in the next one, Vayomer Yaakov, Michra kayoim es bechayras chali. Sell me as today, which Rashi says, basic pshat, as clear as day. Give me a sale as clear as day of your bechorah rights, of your firstborn rights. That's what Yaakov responds.
Are they transferable at all?
So we'll have to, that'll be the first question that we'll get into, is what exactly is included in the bechorah rights. So the story ends that Vayomer Esav hinei anochi holech lamos, he says, I'm going to die anyway, v'lamos eli bechorah, what do I care about the bechorah? Vayomer Yaakov hishavali kayom, swear to me, take a shvuah. V'yishavalo, and he did it. V'yimkor es bechoraso Yaakov, and the Torah says he sold him the bechor. Sounds like it was a sale that worked, full-fledged sale, and Yaakov became in possession of the bechor rights in return for the lentil soup that he gave to Esav.
Now, did Yitzhak ever find out about this before he blessed Yaakov?
I don't know. And Yaakov gave to Esav, V'Yaakov nasan le'Esav lechem u'nezir ad Hashem v'yochav v'yesht. And so he gave it to him. He gave him also lechem, and he gave him this porridge, and he ate, and he drank, and he went on. V'yivaz Esav es bechorah, and he went and he said, what do I need this? This was what did I need this bechorah anyway? It's worthless, etc. So there is a lot written on the Choshen Mishpat, on the monetary law perspective of this parasha. What exactly took place over here? What was this? What were the bechorah rights? What were included? What was the kinyan? How did this kinyan work? Etc. The starting point is, I guess, what was included in this. What does it mean to sell the bechorah rights? It sounds a little bit funny. Like, imagine someone's a Kohen. The Mizrahi asks this question. It's like, imagine someone's a Kohen and he says, I'm going to sell you my rights to being a Kohen. He's a Kohen. You're not a Kohen. You can't sell that. So what exactly is he selling to Yaakov? What did Yaakov want? So Rashi says, it's clear from Rashi that
What did Esav want?
What did Yaakov want from Esav?
Okay,
what did he want to buy? Right. What did he want to buy from Esav?
Right, okay.
So if you look at Rashi explains that the main thing that was being transferred over here was the right to perform the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, avodah sakrabanos, temple service. That's what was being sold over here.
So it's exactly equivalent to a Kohen.
Right. Exactly. That really brings out the question of the Kohen, the Mizrahi, actually, where he asked the question. He asked it on that Rashi. Rashi is in pasuk Lamed Aleph, and Rashi says bechorascha. What does it mean bechorascha? Fisha avodah bechoros, because it used to be before the continuation of the Torah, when there was established a tribe of Kohanim. Before that, the avodah was, this temple service was done by the bechoros. So Amar Yaakov, so Yaakov said to himself, Ein Rasha zeh kedai sheyikrav la'kadosh baruch hu. This Rasha Esav, it's not appropriate, it's not befitting that he bring the karbanos to Hashem. Therefore, that's why he wanted to buy the bechorah rights, and that's what was purchased, the right to give the bechorah. Now this raises a couple questions. One is the one we just mentioned. Imagine a Kohen would say that he wants to sell his rights. He could probably make a lot of money on it. He'll sell his rights to what he does as a Kohen, to duchen, to take pidyon haben, take trumas and maestras, to be over in the Beis Hamikdash. Imagine a Kohen try to do such a thing.
And get the first aliyah.
Get the first aliyah. So I think we would all question that and probably assume that doesn't work, right? The Kohen has a certain kedusha, and that doesn't apply to a zar, a person who is not a Kohen. It's something that you're either born into or you're not born into. So over here, there's a similar question, which is that the Peter Rechem, the one who opens the womb, he's the one who is the bechorah. So he was the one that used to have the status of bringing karbanos. So how could this be done by Yaakov Avinu? How could this be transferred to Yaakov Avinu? There one answer. Many ask this question, and there are many different answers. I'll just say over one of them. The Maral says that it used to be, pre-Matan Torah, the idea that the bechor was bringing the would bring karbanos, that he was the one that had that role. There was no specific dictate in Torah that said that. There wasn't any specific kedushas bechor. It was just natural. He was the most mechubed. The bechor always naturally had the highest status in the family, and therefore did it. So it was really an inyan of kavod. And we know that when
the person who gave him the status was the parents, right?
I mean, really, it's a natural. It was a natural product of being the first.
Right, but the parents here are out of the picture.
That's true. I mean, the parents are not really giving it. It's really a product of the fact that he's the Peter Rechem, that he was the first one out. That gives him a unique status. But it was really an inyan of kavod, the Maral says. That was naturally the respected position in the family. So, the Maral explains, since it's an inyan of kavod is, right, a person could be mocha on their kavod. Like we have most people who deserve a particular kavod, they could be mocha on their kavod. And that's how it was transferable over here. It wasn't through a specific family lineage of a status of Kohanim. It was an inyan of being that those were the most dignified people, they were usually accorded with that kavod, and kavod is able to be nimchal, is able to be transferred. That's the explanation of Maral. That's Rashi. But there's other questions over here. The avodah and the Beis Hamikdash did not yet exist yet. So seemingly this is something that did not yet exist in the world. We already spoke about a couple times. In previous weeks we talked about the idea of that ein adam makneh davar shel ba'olam. A person's not able to transfer over something which they do not yet have possession of, or does not yet exist in this world. So how was this able to be done?
What did Yaakov think he was selling?
Presumably he knew everything. Whatever we're trying to figure out, he knew he was selling. Meaning he
couldn't know at that point about the Beis Hamikdash because it wasn't there.
So the Rashi brings from the Bereshis Rabbah that he did know with Ruach HaKodesh the avodah karbanos that was to come. So he already had an awareness of that at this time, and that's why he wanted, according to Rashi's understanding.
But it wouldn't be hereditary in any case. Bechoros don't inherit that way.
That's true.
So even if it's going to exist in the future, it doesn't exist in the here and now.
Oh, you're asking, meaning what does it matter?
In other words, Esav's descendants, if he kept a bechorah, would not have the special right.
That's true. It sounds like from Rashi, though. That's a good point. It sounds like from Rashi that Rashi understood that Esav himself was going to be able to perform the avodah later on.
How much later?
That's a good question.
I mean, evidently he was in charge of bringing food to Esav, but that's a different thing.
That's a good question. It sounds like over here in the it sounds like there's gonna be bamos, right? The idea of the altars that were before the temple service, before they had a base of mikdash that were going to be that they would be able to bring on.
Okay,
And
let's say he sold it before.
it sounds like there would be a point later on. That this is what it sounds like from the Taz, that there would be a point later on that he was able to there was going to be avodah sacrificial in their lifetime, and he's saying that it's not proper that Esav should bring the carbon.
Well, from time to time, Yaakov would offer something. Was that equivalent?
A carbon?
Yeah, did he offer anything like a real korban?
I don't know where we find that.
I think he would put up monuments or altars or whatever, but I think Rabbi Haitian once remarked that they weren't using it for the
right. Avram Avinu would do that.
But did Yaakov?
Yaakov also would do that later on, I believe.
So if Yaakov could do it later on, and he had not sold it, then maybe.
You're saying those altars were a product of him having bought the bechorah from Esav. Like we have in Pasuk in Perek Chavav, Pasuk Chav Hey, V'yivin Shem Mizbeach B'yikra B'Shem Hashem. So you're saying maybe over there, that's where already we see these altars that were built. So that's what it sounds like from Rashi. There were altars that were built, and I guess, like you're saying, that it was a product of him having bought the bechorah, that Yaakov was the one that was zocheh to bring the karbanos. That's Rashi's opinion. Again, we have this question that it apparently didn't exist yet. Furthermore, there's another problem that it's a davar she'ein bo mamish. It's also many of the Mefarshim asked. One of the concepts, one of the rules in Hilchos Kinyanim that the Talmud says is that a davar she'ein bo mamish, something which has no substance, a physical substance, is not able to be undergo a transaction. That's another question in Rashi's opinion. There is a whole other approach. What kind of substance
would be required?
Meaning a physical substance. Meaning, like, I could sell you this book, but...
So if he had a certificate that he's the bechorah, he could sell the certificate?
If the certificate actually had halachic significance, like the Gemara talks about selling a shtar contains a halachic significance, though, because it actually contains the value of that, of whatever is on the shtar. If the certificate had significance, perhaps, but there is no certificate, there is no shtar that certifies avodah's karbanos, so therefore it wouldn't exist. But if you would have in situation where you have a document which has halachic value, such as a shtar, then that could be a davar she'ein bo mamish. There is another approach over here, or possibly another schus, which is the schus of what monetary right does every bechorah have over the rest of the children?
Double portion.
Double portion, exactly. It says later in the Torah that the bechorah gets pishnayim, he gets a double lot in his father's estate.
Now Yosef got 2 tribes. Does that mean that somehow some aspect of the bechorah was transferred to Yosef?
I don't know. It doesn't sound to me like the same concept, the 2 tribes.
Because Reuven was always nominally the bechorah, but it seemed like in some respects Yosef was being treated like it, being the firstborn of Rachel.
Yeah, he definitely had certain privileges. I'm not sure if that has to do with the idea of pishnayim. I'm not sure about that. But many of the Rishonim actually say that this is the idea, or at least this is one of the things that Yaakov was being koneh. He was being koneh the right, he was acquiring the right to get pishnayim, to get a double lot. And this really strengthens the question of davar shelo b'olam, as we have an explicit Gemara. The Gemara says if someone wants to sell their inheritance, right, so they say, their father is still alive, and they say, they're desperate for money, they need money right now, and they say, I'll sell that which I'm going to inherit when they say when their father dies, they're selling that right. Mm-hmm. So Gemara says that doesn't work. Why? Because it's a davar shelo olam. It doesn't. That schos does not yet exist. They don't yet have that in their possession, and just like something which doesn't exist in the world, like we learned about, you can't acquire. So too, something which is not in their possession, is not in the makneh's possession, the one who is transferring the item. If it's not in his possession yet, then he's not able to make the kinyan. So Gemara says explicitly that doesn't work. So the question is, how was Yaakov Avinu able to be koneh this? It's a davar shelo olam. This question is asked in a very early source. That is the Tur. The Tur, who's the son of the Rosh, he's also the author of the Baal Turim, which is a shorter sefer, has a lot of acronyms and gematrias. He also has a longer perush on the Torah, a longer commentary, and in there he asks this question, and he brings an answer from his father. And his father says, if you look on further in the psukim, right, like we read in Pasuk Lamed Gimel, Yaakov Avinu asks Esav, he says, he shavali, swear to me, take a shvuah, take an oath that this transaction will be fulfilled. Says the Rosh, it's true that typically a davar shelo olam does not work to be transferred. But if there's a shvuah, if there's an oath, then it does work. It has a stronger force now. It has a shvuah behind it, a word that must be kept, and therefore it's able to work. There was someone that apparently saw this some years after, and sent this idea to the great Rivash. Rav Yitzchak bar Sheshes, one of the later Rishonim, a Talmud of the Ran, from those that left Spain. And he's quoted all the time in Shulchan Aruch, a great posek with many tshuvas. And someone sent him this idea from the Rosh, and he wanted to know what he thought about it. He said, he saw it from the Torah, quoting the Rosh, and he asked the Rivash, what do you think? And the Rivash said, it can't be. I didn't see that in the Torah. I didn't see it in the Rosh, and I don't think that such great people could have possibly said such a thing, because it's so obvious that a shvuah will not make any impact in helping a davar shelo olam, causing something which is not yet in possession to work. It's so obvious to me that it must be that it was never written. And in those days, he did not have the Perush HaTur. And it turned out that we have the Perush HaTur, Ha'aruch, the longer commentary of the Torah, and it's in there. It says it straight out. It says that the Torah says, B'Shem, his father, that it works. So we have here a big debate in the Rishonim, a big machlokas, whether shvuah, whether an oath will help to create an ability for a davar shelo olam, a thing which is not yet in the world or not yet in possession, to be acquired. How do we understand this machlokas? What are they arguing about? So the truth is, we mentioned this idea a few times already, davar shelo olam, but we didn't question, why is it that a davar shelo olam cannot be transferred? What's the issue? Why not? It's a machlokas tanaim, actually. There's one Tana, Rameir, who holds that it does work. Other tanaim actually also that hold like that. But the majority hold it doesn't work, and we pass on the halacha doesn't work. But why? The Gemara never brings any pasuk.
Is there a way to make a kinyan on something like that?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
If a thing doesn't exist, how can you make a kinyan of that thing?
So I think if I understand what Mr. Miller is saying, I think what he's saying is that a kinyan is a status change to a particular item.
But there's no item here.
But if there's no item here, then how could you create that status? The item does not exist. It's not here, or it's not within my realm. It's not within my control. So how can I affect the item that I don't have? That's one understanding. Very good. Any other problems that anyone could see with the davar shelo ba'olam? Something that would be problematic?
I would just say, like, that nothing's happening.
That sounds like a similar idea.
But that
sounds like a similar idea. But what's the yesod of kinyanim? What causes kinyanim to work? Right? It's the daas, the knowledge, the willingness of the seller. And because of that, there's a concept that comes up in the Gemara all the time, the idea of smichas daas, the idea that in order for a legal transfer to take place, or any legal acquisition, this is applicable to sales, gifts, marriage, divorce, anything, any legal acquisition like that, it needs daas, and daas means that a person really is somech daas, really has complete knowledge and willingness of what they're doing. So, because of that, their other understanding. This is a big hakir that's talked about many places, talked about a lot in the yeshivas. Rabbi Perlow has a famous piece about this, and he explains that the other possibility is that when the item doesn't exist, then or at least the person doesn't have it, then we can't rely that they have full smichas daas. We can't rely that they are fully committing themselves to a deal on an item which does not yet exist in the world. That's the other possibility. So if you think about these two possibilities, and this has been said in many different places, but it fits very, very nicely. The Kohanim talks about this, and others talk about this, that if you think about the machlokas between the Rosh and the Rivash, you could really understand where each of them are coming from based on these two understandings. If you say that it's like Mr. Miller said, and like Chaim was saying, like there's nothing for it to take effect on. There's nothing here. There needs to be something tangible that you can create a status change on. So if the Rivash would understand like that's what the issue of davar shelo ba'olam is, it would fit very well why he thinks that a shvuah would not make a difference. What does a shvuah do? A shvuah makes something more serious. It makes something more that everyone has to keep their word. But what does that help us? The item doesn't exist, so there's no status change that could take place. You might have to keep a shvuah, but how is that going to create a transaction? The problem with the transaction is that the item is not here to take effect on. If you would understand, though, that the problem with a davar shelo ba'olam is that a person doesn't have smichas daas, a person is not really fully committing to a deal which is not really tangible yet, it's not possible yet, then we could understand why a shvuah would help. Because
that's a commitment.
A commitment with a shvuah, which the Gemara talks about how serious a shvuah is, that the whole world, Gemara in Shvuahs talks, the whole world shakes from a shvuah. A shvuah is a very, very strong commitment. It is basically a swear by God that, by God's name, that this thing is true, or this thing will be true. And when a person does that, he's not going to take it lightly. And therefore that can increase the seriousness of the commitment. And if the shortcoming, if the lacking of a davar shelo ba'olam is that it's not, we don't believe that he's serious, so taking a shvuah can rectify that. And that would be very understandable. The amazing thing is, 2 weeks in a row, Indianapolis, Rosh Lishitaso. The Rivash Weiss, who has many pieces on this, he has about 5 essays on what happened in this transaction, from all over the place. And he points out an amazing thing. If you look at the Tosus Rosh, which was also authored by the Rosh, in Bava Basra, Kufman Beis and Beis. The Rosh says explicitly, points it out from the Gemara there, he implies something in the Gemara, he says explicitly, we see from here that the problem that why a person is not able to be makneh a davar shelo olam is because they're not gomer makneh, they're not somech daas. The Rosh says explicitly that is the lacking, that is the reason why a davar shelo olam does not work. And therefore, we have again a Rosh l'shitas, a Rosh that is consistent in two places, that's the reason why a davar shelo olam does not work is because he doesn't have daas on it. And that's why the Rosh would say in this week's parsha, would bring a raya from this week's parsha, that when you take a shvuah, it does work. And it would make sense to him, because the shvuah rectifies that issue of not having a serious commitment.
So you have a serious commitment, but the object in question still doesn't exist.
So it will take effect once the item comes into existence, but the ma'aseh kinyan, the legal acquisition, was already performed at that time. So it's true that I won't be able to own the thing until I actually get it, but I have already acquired it, and thereby acquired a legal right, ownership that cannot be backed out of, from the time of the transaction. Just to contrast this, right? Who do we paskin like? The Rosh Rivash sounds like we're just talking, Chumash over here, but this is actually brought in Shulchan Aruch, where the Shulchan Aruch discusses this exact idea in the halachas of davar shelo olam. The Shulchan Aruch discusses what happens if a person takes a shvuah. So Shulchan Aruch rules in favor of the Rivash, that it does not work. However, there's an important point to realize. You still do have a shvuah. What I mean by that is that the shvuah doesn't work to create the transaction, but the shvuah still takes effect as a shvuah, right? There's still a shvuah in place that, like, let's say, I tell you, Mr. Miller, I'm gonna sell you all the apples on my tree when they grow in next season. So that's a classic davar shelo olam. And you say, well, that's a davar shelo olam. So I say, okay, I'll take a shvuah. So Shulchan Aruch rules that you won't become the owner. The transaction won't work as a legal kinyan. It won't be a legal acquisition. But I do have an oath towards you that those apples are going to be yours. That I'm going to carry through with my word, with a shvuah. Which does bring us to a question: what is the practical difference whether it works or not? Either way, Mr. Miller is going to have to get those pears. He's going to have to get those apples, because either he legally acquired them, or he has a shvuah that I'm going to have to keep. Is the whole difference for if I would decide to chas v'shalom not keep my shvuah?
Did Esav understand what was going on?
That's a good question.
I mean, you could say that the whole thing should be thrown out because Esav was under duress and
that's a great point.
Wasn't thinking straight.
That's the next point I was going to talk about.
Being taken advantage of.
So I'll get to that in a second. But once you bring it up, I'll get to that in a second. But the practical difference is
like imagine acts of Congress tend to be very big. I mean, you walk over to somebody and say, will you vote yes on this? Because I'm the majority leader, you better. And he said, okay, fine. But that doesn't mean I know what's in it.
Very good. So Mr. Miller is mechavin to the panim meiris. The panim meiris, I say it from Chumash, asks this kasha, that we have a concept in the Talmud, Meshata anibach. I was just joking. Meaning, you have certain cases where a person was, the basic understanding is that a person was they were under duress, had a certain pressure. The Gemara gives a case where someone was, unlawfully put in jail, in prison, happened all the time to Jews throughout the ages, and they escaped, and they're running away, and they get to a river. And back in the day, how did you get across the river? There was ferries. So business people would have, they would have, they would have ferry service, and they would take you across.
I used to take a ferry to high school.
Oh, even in your day, they still had it. So that's what they used to do. So the Gemara gives a case where this guy Plony gets out of jail, and everyone knew he was in jail, and he got out, and he's running away, and the ferry guy sees him coming, and he says, "Oh, what a great opportunity! This guy's gonna be in a big rush, and he has no other option." So normally the fare is $10. So
For you.
he says for you, he comes and he says $150. So he says, yeah, whatever it is, whatever the price is, I'll take it. I got to get out. I got to get across. I got to run away.
And he gets across, he says,
He gets across and he says, Mashata Nibach. I wasn't serious. So the Gemara says that...
obviously the guy should have demanded the money up front.
That's true. And that actually, that's the chiddush of the Rashba. The Rashba says that if you would get the money before, then you can no longer make the claim of Mishat Anibach. If you would actually transfer the money, then he would no longer be able to make that claim. The Rashi actually says that it's the next din brought down in Shulchan Aruch. So there is another question over here. How did this sale take effect? There's seemingly Esav could have had a taina Mishat Anibach. He's selling his whole bechorah. He's selling everything that's included in that. You see Orach Chaim. You see there's a lot of besides the things we discussed, there's a lot of value to this bechorah, and it was just for one lentil dish.
Well, later on, was Esav really expecting the bechorah?
Right, maybe in a Hanami he could have said, but was there a point in time where he would have wanted to say that?
Well, you see he regretted it after.
Right.
You see later in the parsha that he regretted it. You're saying maybe he... I don't know.
He might have regretted it before it existed.
Unless we're saying that...
Seeming
something to eat.
Yes. It sounds like from the Torah, though, and the Rosh makes this point, that from the fact that the Torah concludes and says, V'yimkras b'chorasel Yaakov, it sounds like the mechira was binding. It sounds like it was a binding sale. So it does sound like it worked and that he wouldn't have been able to back out from it. And the question is, why can't he say Meshata Nibach? I don't remember
the question why can't he say it, or the question is
he has the taina, therefore it doesn't work. Exactly right. Since he has the taina, therefore the sale should not take effect.
If he wants to undo the sale, does he have to give the lentils back?
So that would be an interesting question. It would be hard to apply in our case. I'll explain why. When you make a taina of Meshata Nibach, so let's say the case that we had of the ferry, right? So a person, so the din is, he doesn't owe him $0. He still did him a service, right? So he owes him the regular charge. He doesn't, instead of owing him $150, he owes him the regular rate of 10. Now over here, it's a little bit hard to break up what the rights of the bechorah are. What exactly would be the equivalent to the lentil soup in the bechor? How exactly would you divide that up is not so clear. I should add though, there is a discussion in the commentary whether the only thing he gave him was the lentil soup. A bunch of the Rishonim say that the lentil soup was just an added thing that he gave him, but he actually gave him a large sum of money in order to acquire it besides for that. But anyway...
Where does it say anything like that?
It talks about that in the Sforno is one place. I saw it in other places also. Possibly, according to the Sforno, that would help with the question. If you held that he gave him something else, then that would seemingly get rid of the taina Meshata Nibach, depending on how much he gave him and how much this bechor was worth. But many don't learn like that, and they understand that the lentil soup was the whole transfer. And then we would have this question of Meshata Nibach. There are many different approaches to how to deal with this question. I'll just say over two of them. One you can answer similar to what we said before, is that there was a shvuah. Yaakov Vinu said, "Make a shvuah for me," and he made a shvuah.
So that.
So when could you say
eliminates any-
Mishpat? I was just joking. I was just joking. That's when there's no shvuah. But if there was a shvuah, then how could you say Mishpat nibach? And that's what the Ktosa Shulchan says in Shulchan Aruch. Ktosa Choshen, says in Shulchan Aruch. The Ktosa says that there's no Mishpat nibach when you take a shvuah. You can't make such a claim that I was just joking. You took a shvuah, nothing more serious in the world. It's very, very logical. Another possibility is that Mishpat nibach, and this is more fundamental, Mishpat nibach passively is only something that one can claim when it's a service. Like the case in the Gemara, a service of taking someone across, or basically hired work. But a legal acquisition, a legal transfer, it's possible that there is no concept of Mishpat nibach over there. That's also a machlokes rishonim. So we'll end just on this. The question that we were dealing with before is that what practically would be the difference whether this would take effect, the sale would take effect, or it would be a shvuah. What's the whole difference of the machlokes rishonim between the Rivash and the Rosh? What does it make a difference whether it would be a shvuah or a sale? Either way, he would have to keep it. So it would be two nafkaminas. In general, there's two nafkaminas. One is what happens, two practical differences between whether something needs to be kept because of a shvuah or because there was actually a legal sale. One is, what if the seller dies? If the seller dies, then if it's just a shvuah that he has an obligation to keep his word, his inheritors don't have an obligation to keep his word. Therefore, his inheritors would be able to keep it. They wouldn't have to give it over. But if it's a legal sale, then it already belongs to the other party. And even their inheritors would have to give it over to the other party. Another nafkamina is hataras nedarim, being shol on a shvuah, right? We said in hataras nedarim for our shana, we want to get rid of our shvuahs also. You could get rid of a shvuah. So if it's just a shvuah, a person could get rid of it if they have the right formula. They could get rid of it. They could get rid of it with a bezdin. A legal sale, that's locked in forever. So this is just some of the topics. Really, it's endless. The amount it's unbelievable. The amount that was written both in the early commentators and Rishonim and the late commentators. But we'll stop here.
Well, they operate